Exactly 20,000 years ago, deep within a frozen cave, a woman took her last breath. Her body was a statue, crystallized by time, but the real secret lay clutched tightly in her hand as she died, a single deer tooth pendant carved with impossible precision. When, 20,000 years later, scientists managed to extract the woman's DNA from the surface of this pendant, they unearthed a truth that would fundamentally shake everything we know about the Ice Age. This woman was not a primitive cave dweller shivering and desperately struggling to survive. She was part of the most complex and sophisticated survival network the world had ever seen. So, how can a single deer tooth found in a frozen cave unlock the doors to a lost civilization? In this journey, you will see that our ancestors didn't just survive. They overcame the world's most brutal climate crisis with unbelievable engineering and cooperation. We will discover how they built cities from mammoth bones, established intercontinental trade networks, and even reprogrammed their own biology to adapt to the environment. And by the end of the video, when you learn that this small deer tooth may have been humanity's first global passport, your perspective will change completely. To help us continue these mysterious journeys, don't forget to subscribe to the Human Stories channel and like the video. Your support helps the secrets of the past reach more people. How do you think these primitive people managed this incredible cooperation? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. Now, let's pull back the curtain of time and set off for the frozen heart of the world, 26,000 years ago. About 26,000 years ago, the world seemed determined to wipe out all humans. The planet's thermostat had broken, and temperatures had dropped to a level averaging 15 degrees Celsius, colder than even today's harshest winters. Massive ice sheets swallowed continents one by one, crushing the Earth with their kilometer-thick weight. Even the air we breathed had turned into an enemy. The atmosphere was filled with 25 times more dust than today. The sky was cloaked in a poisonous haze that barely let the sun's light through. Under these apocalyptic conditions, most animal species were wiped from the face of the Earth. But humans looked at this apocalypse and seemingly said, "Hold on a second, let me just put down my bone needle." When archaeologists began excavating Ice Age settlements, they expected the familiar story. Desperate people huddled around a fire, wretched communities trying to get by with scavenged scraps of meat. But what they found was the exact opposite of these expectations. Before them was the evidence of one of the most incredible technological revolutions in human history. These people were not just surviving the Ice Age, they were literally engineering their own way forward, rewriting the rules of nature. One of the most striking pieces of evidence for this revolution was hidden beneath the frozen ground in the Yana River region of northern Siberia. Here, researchers discovered something that upended all previous knowledge about prehistoric life: needle cases. But these weren't crude, simple tools. They were organized storage systems containing exactly 192 perfectly crafted bone needles with drilled eyelets. Each needle was made with precision engineering from carefully selected animal bones. Fox bones were used for flexibility, lynx bones for durability, and rabbit bones for working the finest details. This was not primitive craftsmanship, it was industrial production. When scientists examined these needles under electron microscopes, they encountered manufacturing techniques that wouldn't be out of place in a modern factory. The eyelets were perfect circles, drilled with tools that left microscopic spiral marks. Their tips were shaped and polished until they reached the sharpness of a surgical scalpel. These people had invented mass clothing production 30,000 years before humanity even thought of planting the first seed in the soil. But that's not the craziest part of the story. They weren't just making clothes, they were designing layered clothing systems, form-fitting inner garments worn beneath outer layers. Yes, you heard that right. Our ancestors had invented underwear in the Ice Age, While much of Europe was buried under glaciers, these people were walking around in custom-designed survival gear so sophisticated it would make modern Arctic equipment look primitive. Needles tell only one part of the story. At Dolní Věstonice in the modern-day Czech Republic, while woolly mammoths roamed outside their doors, people were firing the world's first ceramics. They were creating Venus figurines with artistry that would rival Renaissance masters, hardening clay with fire to make immortal works. This was not just an artistic leap, but the very birth of materials science. However, the most shocking discovery was their architecture. About 15,000 years ago, in a region called Mazurich in Ukraine, people built a structure that shattered all assumptions about Paleolithic abilities. They constructed incredibly complex dwellings, using the bones of exactly 149 mammoths. These structures featured interlocking ivory joints, raised floors for air circulation, and strategically placed heating systems. This was not a shack. It was a feat of engineering. The main structure at Mazurich had a diameter of about 12 meters. Its walls, reaching 4 meters high, were constructed from meticulously arranged, interlocking mammoth skulls and leg bones in precise geometric patterns. Massive mammoth tusks served as the main supporting columns, joined by carefully carved ivory sleeves. These joints were so perfect you couldn't fit a knife blade between them. Inside, they had created rooms with different functions, storage areas, workshop sections, and even a section thought to be a children's room. Pause for a moment to consider what this means. To build this structure, they had to hunt, process, and transport hundreds of kilograms of bones from at least 95 different mammoths across frozen terrain for kilometers. They needed to understand load-bearing calculations, thermodynamics, and architectural engineering. This implied organized teams of workers, coordinated planning, and a construction process lasting months. But do you know the most incredible part? This was not a hastily constructed emergency shelter built during a desperate winter. Evidence shows that these mammoth bone houses were permanent settlements, used for decades. Multiple generations lived in these structures, making repairs and improvements over time. While the rest of the world was covered in a frozen crust, these people were building cities of bone. So, how did they organize such massive projects? The answer came from a completely unexpected place. When scientists began mapping where Ice Age tools and materials came from, they discovered something astonishing. Raw materials traveled hundreds, even thousands of kilometers. Obsidian stone from volcanic regions appeared in settlements 500 kilometers away. Seashells gathered from the Mediterranean coast reached caves in Central Europe. Amber from the Baltic Sea traveled to communities near the Black Sea. This was not random wandering. This was organized, systematic, and long-distance trade. In the midst of humanity's worst climate crisis, people were maintaining economic relationships across distances that would challenge even modern logistics. The scale of these networks was astounding. Archaeologists found spondylus shells native to the Aegean Sea in settlements near the English Channel. This meant a journey of approximately 5,000 kilometers and required the coordination of dozens of different groups. However, the real breakthrough in understanding Ice Age society came in 2023, when scientists achieved something that seemed like science fiction. They successfully extracted human DNA from a 20,000-year-old deer tooth pendant found in Denisova Cave. For the first time in history, they could link a specific prehistoric artifact to the actual person who used it. The pendant belonged to a woman. DNA analysis revealed the woman had strong genetic ties to ancient North Eurasian populations. This proved that even 20,000 years ago, humans maintained genetic connections across vast distances. But what truly shocked the researchers was this. The pendant showed wear marks consistent with regular use. This indicated it was not just an ornament, it was an identity. It was a sort of passport, showing what network you belong to when encountering strangers hundreds of kilometers from home. This changes our entire picture of Ice Age life. These were not isolated, struggling tribes. They were continent-scale social networks with their own identity systems, trade protocols, and cooperation agreements. When someone needed obsidian for a tool or seashells for a ceremony, they knew exactly who and how to reach out. This cooperation ran much deeper than trade. Archaeological sites in Europe and Asia have yielded evidence of coordinated hunting expeditions between different groups. Mammoth kill sites showed butchering marks indicating multiple cultural traditions working side by side. Cave art projects that took years to complete revealed the merging of artistic styles from different regions in a single space. So, how did they coordinate all this activity? The answer lies in something even more remarkable than their technology or trade networks. These people had fundamentally reprogrammed their own biology. Recent genetic analyses have revealed that Ice Age populations developed specific physiological adaptations to survive the extreme cold. Enhanced lung capacity for processing thin, cold air, cardiovascular changes that improved blood flow to the limbs, and mitochondrial adaptations that allowed their cells to extract more energy from limited food. The incredible part is this. These were not random evolutionary changes over thousands of generations. These were targeted adaptations that emerged within a few centuries after the onset of the Ice Age. In a way, these populations were accelerating their own evolution in response to environmental pressure. The key was metabolic efficiency. While their Neanderthal cousins had rugged, powerful builds that required 40% more calories to survive, Ice Age modern humans evolved to do more with less. Smaller stature requiring less food, more efficient digestive systems that extracted maximum nutrients from available resources, and brains that could solve complex problems using minimum energy. This metabolic advantage became vital when the Ice Age peaked 21,000 years ago. At that moment, the world's temperature dropped to its absolute minimum. Most large animals perished. Even the mighty Neanderthals, who had survived hundreds of thousands of years of climate change, finally succumbed to conditions too extreme for their high metabolism lifestyle. But humans looked at this apocalypse and carved their path with innovation. At Qasem Cave in Israel, they had already developed controlled fire technology reaching temperatures of 500 degrees Celsius. They weren't just warming themselves, they were conducting complex chemical processes. They produced waterproof adhesives by heating birch bark, extracted fibers for rope and clothing by processing plant materials, and created the world's first preserved food by storing deer bone marrow in leather containers for up to 9 weeks. Imagine for a moment, while most of the world was frozen, these people were operating what were essentially ancient laboratories. Perhaps the most incredible aspect of Ice Age survival was what happened when multiple human species competed for the same resources. Archaeological evidence shows that Neanderthals, Denisovans, and modern humans all lived in overlapping territories during the peak of the Ice Age. Yet, only modern humans survived. Why? The answer is not what you might expect. Neanderthals were strong, but modern humans possessed something none of their rivals had, the ability to cooperate with strangers. When resources became scarce at the Ice Age peak, Neanderthals and Denisovans competed primarily within their own family groups. Modern humans, however, formed alliances between unrelated communities. If one group's hunting ground froze over, they had backup options hundreds of kilometers away. This cooperation advantage grew exponentially over time. Communities that shared knowledge survived better than those that hoarded secrets. Groups that accepted refugees gained larger populations and more genetic diversity. By 20,000 years ago, modern humans had created something unprecedented in evolutionary history. a continent-wide civilization that could survive conditions no single community could endure alone. The woman with the deer tooth pendant was part of this network. Her necklace was not just a piece of jewelry, it was proof of membership in humanity's first global civilization. This is what allowed humans to achieve the impossible. Not superior strength, bigger brains, or better tools, but cooperation, the willingness to help strangers, and the deep insight that everyone survives better when everyone works together. The last glacial maximum didn't break humanity. It forged us into the species we are today. Those frozen nights 26,000 years ago, the moments when our ancestors looked at an impossible situation and chose cooperation over competition, innovation over surrender, and hope over despair. Those moments made us who we are. Whenever modern humans face a crisis and choose to work together instead of fighting each other, we channel the spirit of that woman with the deer tooth pendant. Whenever we share knowledge instead of hoarding it, we honor the Ice Age Innovators who created humanity's first global civilization. The coldest night in human history was not our darkest hour. It was the moment we learned that when we are together, we can overcome anything. We hope this journey has been impactful for you. You can support us by subscribing to the Human Stories channel and liking the video. See you in the shadows of the past.